All right, so today I wanted to go ahead and dive into something that surrounds what Colin Porter, this person, had asked on my discussion page a few weeks ago about the operation of tetration. So in order to get there, I'm going to have to go ahead and talk about the sequence of hyperoperators, and then we'll do some just basics with tetration, and then I'll talk about the thing and how you can extend this operation to other types of numbers. So as the title of this video sort of alludes to, tetration is an operation that comes after exponentiation, but what that means isn't super clear. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with just going over the first few very familiar terms of the sequence of hyperoperators. So the 0th operator in the sequence of hyperoperators is the successor operator. It is the most fundamental operation that you can do with a natural number. You can succeed that natural number. And so what makes the successor operation a little bit different from the other operations that will be in this list is that the successor operator is what is called a unary operator. Unary? It's like I don't know, it's a word that I see all the time and read, but it's one of those things I haven't said out loud ever, so I'm probably saying it wrong. But all that means is that it's an operation that only handles one element. So for this case, with the successor operator, you're going to plug a natural number into the successor operator, and it will put out its increment by 1. Also, just to mention before I'm going to continue, I'm going to define all of these operations, even though some of them will be used to thinking about using in different domains as operating on just the natural numbers. The reason for that is that I don't have to get into any weird special cases about like where things can fall apart and how to define what happens at 0 for certain ones of these. So after succession, the first hyperoperator, even though doesn't really feel like a hyperoperator because we haven't really got to the weird ones yet, is addition. And the reason that you can think of addition as a hyperoperator is because addition works as an iteration of successions. So if we have m plus n, we can take the successor operator and apply it n times to m. After addition, you can probably guess that the second hyperoperation is multiplication. Much like addition, multiplication can be defined based on the previous operation. So when we say m times n, we're just adding n copies of m together. We can also write this in terms of the successor function, which I'll write down here as well. But here it's actually kind of gross to write it out. And for the rest of the hyperoperators, I won't get that granular because it turns out to be a chore to write out those operations in terms of just the successor function. So the third hyperoperator is then exponentiation, because it is the operation that can be defined by iterating the multiplication operation over and over again. Just to be clear about what we're talking about, if we have m to the nth power, then that's the same thing as just taking m times m but n times. So next, and this is the operation that is core to what we're going to be talking about in this video, is tetration, which is also known as hyper4. I'm going to be writing it throughout this video with this left power notation, where you just have a superscript on the left side of the number that you're applying the tetration operation to. But there are several different types of notation that you can use for this. Tetration is defined as iterated exponentiation. So if we have this superscript nm thing going on, then that's just equal to m to the m to the m all the way up to the m n times. And so how I'll go ahead and read this left superscript and then the normal number notation for the rest of this video is the tetration of, in this example, m to the height of n. So the one thing I want to know about tetrations is that, like in this example here, this number is massive. It's gigantic. And that was one of the original uses for tetrations. It was used as a shorthand for extremely large numbers, or estimating extremely large numbers. But there are kind of like two ways that you can think about this and push it mathematically if you're sort of bogged down by the size of it. One, you could take the theoretical math approach of like, oh, this is a cool thing that generates large numbers, but I don't really care about the results of tetrating numbers and getting those actual like values down on a piece of paper. Instead, I want to study the properties of that operation. And then you could also go the more like numerical analysis, computer science route of thinking about it, is that these numbers are massive. How are we going to efficiently compute them and print them out to a user? And the bottleneck here with tetration is not that the numbers are hard to compute because it's just doing powers and we know how to do powers. It's just that they're so large that some of these numbers get so big that computers don't have enough memory to hold all of the digits that they contain. So anyway, that's a thing. I want to talk about tetration and its properties because that's what I'm interested in, and we'll get sort of to the question of how to extend the operation here in a second as well. All right, so just to get a better handle on tetration as an operation and what properties it has when you're algebraically manipulating it in an equation and doing all that stuff, it's good to just get some of the basics down. And one of the best ways that you can work with the operator, especially hyperoperators that are derived from previous operations, is to compare them to their predecessors. So in these examples, we're going to be focusing on formulas from just doing arithmetic with exponentiation and comparing that to what happens with tetration. So for example, first off, if you take a plus b squared, then you're going to get a squared plus 2ab plus b squared as long as you're not in a field of characteristic 2 math. So anyway, so that's generally what you'd get. But when you go ahead and you tetrate a plus b to the height of 2, what you're doing is not a plus b squared. Instead, you're doing a plus b to the a plus b power. And then using some exponent rules, you can break that up into a plus b to the 8th power times a plus b to the bth power. Next on the list, if you want to look at what happens when you square a product of elements, you're going to have quantity of ab all squared is equal to a squared b squared. However, when you tetrate ab to the height of 2, what you end up getting is a little bit messier, but it looks similar. So what happens is you get ab to the ab power, and then using some exponent rules, you can break that up into various multiplications, both at the base level and in the exponent. So we can get a to the a times b to the b times a. That's just the tetration of a to the height of 2 quantity to the bth power times the tetration of b to the height of 2 quantity to the 8th power. The next one here seems kind of stupid, but I think it's really cool because even though there's not really a comparison between the two, the tetration formula gives you a way of expressing a particularly not fun function to deal with in terms of hyperbolic sines and hyperbolic cosines, which are essentially just exponential powers. So if you just take x squared, then you're just doing x times x. But when we move over to the tetration case, you can do a little bit more. X tetrated to the height of 2 is going to be x to the x power. We can rewrite that as e to the natural log of x to the x power, and then pull down that additional to the x power into the natural log as a product. So x times the natural log of x. By just adding 0 and scaling things a little bit, we end up with the hyperbolic cosine of x natural log of x plus the hyperbolic sine of x times natural log of x. The last thing to notice and compare just between the two is how we can express each operation as an iterator of the previous operation. So when we have exponentiation, if you do x to the n, we can express that as x times x to the n minus 1th power. Similarly with tetration, the tetration of x to the height of n is equal to x to the power of the tetration of x to the height of n minus 1. At this point, tetration is only defined on pairs of natural numbers being sent to another natural number. But we can do better, and there are two opportunities to do so. We can either generalize in terms of base, or we can generalize in terms of height. So if we go ahead and look at base, one of the most natural things you can do here is to start with the positive real numbers. And again, I'm not including 0 here because the 0 case is a little bit weird. We can go ahead and just pick some positive real number and we can proceed as we would before. If you have, for example, the tetration of a half to the height of 3, then that's just 0.5 to the half. So that was pretty just straightforward. The next case, we're going to skip past the negative real numbers and just go straight to the complex numbers because it's easier just to do them all at once. But what we can do is we can actually use Euler's formula for complex powers in order to figure out what the right way to define a tetration on complex bases would be. All right, so now we should probably address the 0 elephant in the room. If you know your exponentiation pretty well, you know that 0 to the 0th power is an indeterminate form. So at least for the case of tetrations, if we want to be able to define what the tetration of 0 to the height of n is, we're going to have to use limits. And so it turns out that if we consider the limit as x approaches 0 of the tetration of x to the height of n, where n is a natural number, we end up getting that if n is even, then that limit approaches 1. And if n is odd, then that limit approaches 0. And so we can define that the tetration of 0 to the height of n is 1 if n is even and 0 if n is odd. Now, it takes quite a bit of work to get there, but actually, Black Pen Red Pen has a video where they go through and do the limit of x to the x, which covers the n equals 2 case and can give some intuition to how you might approach this in a more general sense with x to higher heights of tetration. I've gone ahead and left Black Pen Red Pen's video in the description below, so if you want to go ahead and check that out, highly recommend it. It's a good exercise to just remind you how to deal with limits like that, and it can help get you to the more general problem of looking at the limit for any given n when you're tetrating to that nth height. So at this point, I have basically totally avoided Colin's original question about tetrations, and Colin's original question was about what happens when you tetrate a number to a non-integer height, was the essence of the question. And so my answer isn't going to be like fully detailed because it would take me a while to get there, and it would require that we build up a little bit more background in some other areas of mathematics to address all of the things that we would need to make it rigorous. The first question to ask is, well, can we take real value height tetrations? And the answer is yes and no. And the reason why it's both is that there are several ways to extend the tetration operator to the real numbers, but no one has agreed upon which method of extending the tetration function is the right one. And so it's hard to go and give a full answer to what is, for example, like half tetrated to a height of half. It doesn't really make sense to assign a value there when there is no consensus on what is the right extension to use. The other question you might have is that, well, in the case of base, we just went straight from positive real numbers to complex numbers. Is there a way that we can go and skip over extending to the real numbers completely and just go straight to complex numbers? So the answer is that we can extend to the complex numbers. We just have to mess with a little bit of the stuff that we did before. in order to extend to the complex numbers in the best way, we would actually need to go ahead and reduce the domain of the allowable bases that we're using. So instead of using all of the complex numbers as possible bases, we would need to eliminate real numbers that are less than or equal to -2. So yeah, anyway, that's all I have for you. I hope this little introduction to what tetrations are and various extensions of tetrations was at least interesting. If you're interested in any more of the math and complex analysis behind the height extension to the complex numbers and things like that, you can go ahead and leave a comment down below, or just give this video a thumbs up to let me know that I should do the video that I think would be cool. Also, if you do enjoy the math stuff that I do here on the internet, or if you enjoyed this video, you can also subscribe to this channel for more mathematics content that I make and put out on the internet here. But yeah, that is all I've got for you today. As always, I am Nathan, this is Chalk, and I will see you next time.